Hey there.
Hello, Heather. Please make yourself comfortable. We can begin whenever you're ready.
I'm not really sure how to start. I've never done therapy before.
That's all right. There's no wrong way to do this. Perhaps you could tell me what's been on your mind lately, or what brought you here.
Lately, I can't sleep. Or when I do, I have nightmares. The same place every time, the same things. That's why I'm here. I can't deal with it alone anymore.
That sounds very distressing. Would you like to tell me about them?
They're hard to even put into words. They feel so real. I dream I'm back there, in that town. Silent Hill.
Silent Hill? That's an actual town?
Yes, a small town in Maine. But not a place you'd want to visit. In my dreams, I'm walking through its streets. Everything's foggy. Often, I find myself in the old amusement park there. It's empty, or it seems empty at first. Those damned rabbit dolls are everywhere, smeared with blood, slumped over benches, or leaning against the walls. It's so eerie.
You're painting a very vivid picture.
I can smell the place in the dream. It smells like old blood and ash. Sometimes there's this distant siren wailing far away, echoing, and there's usually something chasing me, though I'm never sure what. I'm on the roller coaster tracks there, of all places. There's a nightmare where I stand on those tracks. I feel a vibration of an oncoming roller coaster. It gets closer and closer until I can see the headlights, and then it slams into me, and I wake up right before I would, well, die.
A classic dream of impending disaster and paralysis. It must be terrifying. Being unable to move while something inevitable and deadly rushes toward you. It mirrors how powerless you felt in the face of what happened, doesn't it?
That's exactly how I felt. Powerless. In the dream and in reality back then, part of me was just a scared girl stuck on the tracks of fate, about to be run down.
It makes sense that your mind is replaying that sense of helplessness in such a visceral way.
Other times, I'm running through the park. I can hear the distant call of the carousel and that cheesy carnival music, but everything's wrong. I can sense something is behind me, chasing. I catch glimpses of it. Sometimes it's just a shadow. Sometimes it looks like a person.
You're doing well. Those dreams sound incredibly frightening, but you're describing them clearly.
They're not just dreams. They're memories, too. That's what really gets me. They're twisted and exaggerated sometimes, but they're based on things I actually went through.
You've been to Silent Hill in real life?
Yes, a few months ago. Everything I see in those nightmares, I saw when I was awake in that town.
It must have been a very traumatic experience for it to still haunt you so vividly. If you feel able, could you tell me what happened in Silent Hill?
Okay, I'll try. It's a long story, and it's gonna sound unbelievable.
I'm here to listen. It doesn't have to sound believable to anyone else, as long as it's what you experienced.
A few months ago, my life changed completely. Up until then, I was living with my dad, Harry, in Portland. We moved around a lot while I was growing up. I never really knew why. I thought maybe dad just liked to travel or couldn't settle, and I was a kid, so I went along. By 17, I had finally started to feel almost normal. We'd been in Portland for a couple years. I was even thinking about college, maybe making some friends for once. At the mall, this older guy started following me around. It was subtle at first. I saw him in one store, then another. I thought I was being paranoid, but then I caught him clearly tailing me. I was immediately on edge.
Did you recognize him?
No, I'd never seen him before. Kind of a scruffy, middle-aged man in a trench coat. At first, I actually thought he might be a private detective or something, which turned out to be right. Anyway, I got nervous. I tried to lose him by hiding in the ladies' room. I ended up climbing out a bathroom window into a back alley, but that's when everything went crazy.
Crazy? In what way?
One moment, I was in a normal service corridor, and the next, I was somewhere else entirely. I thought maybe I had passed out or was hallucinating. I wandered that corridor and stumbled into a clothing store. That's where I saw the first body. She was sprawled on the floor, blood everywhere, and someone had covered her with old newspapers as if to hide the gore, but it just made it creepier.
My God.
I wanted to scream or run, but I just froze. I'd never seen a dead person before, and while I was standing there in shock, I heard this shuffling noise behind me. When I turned, I saw a creature. Not human. I can barely describe it. It was tall, had pale skin. Its head was messed up, like it had a broken neck. And this wasn't just some nightmare. It was real. I did what anyone would. I panicked and backed up against the wall, and by pure luck, I bumped into a gun. The guard's pistol, maybe. But I grabbed it, and I shot that thing until it stopped moving.
My God, that's extremely frightening.
It was terrifying. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I remember stepping over that thing's body and just running, looking for an exit. Eventually, I found a door leading back to the mall's main corridors. And suddenly, just like that, everything was normal again. The walls were clean, the lights on. For a second, I thought maybe I'd imagined all of it, but I still had the gun and blood on my shirt that wasn't mine. I wasn't crazy. That nightmare had been real.
The sudden shifts in reality. Did that happen often in Silent Hill?
Yeah, that's one of the worst things about that place. Silent Hill it's like two sides. There's the foggy, deserted town, and then there's the other world. That's where the monsters come out. I've heard theories. Some say it's a curse. Honestly, I still don't fully understand it. I just survived it. Anyway, I was still reeling from what happened in the mall when the detective finally caught up to me, the man who'd been following me. I found out his name was Douglas Cartland. He was panting, asking if I was okay. I probably looked wild. I know I was blood-splattered and clutching that pistol. Douglas kept saying he didn't want to hurt me, that he was hired by someone to find me. I didn't trust him at all right then.
Understandable, given what you'd just been through.
I basically told him to back off. I only had one thought: get home to Dad. I figured whatever nightmare had hunted me in that mall might go after my father next, or I just needed the safety of home. So I left Douglas there, ran out of the mall, and headed home. The streets were strangely empty and foggy, but I managed to catch a train for part of the way. In hindsight, maybe I should have stayed with Douglas. He might have helped, but I wasn't thinking clearly. I wanted my dad. When I got home, I found my father's body.
What happened to him?
It was like my whole world shattered in an instant. I kept hoping I'd wake up and find it was just another nightmare. I pinched my arm so hard it bruised, just to try to jolt myself out of what felt like a hallucination.
He must have been very important to you.
He was. Not perfect, maybe. He could be overprotective and a bit of a dork, but he was wonderful to me. He had this goofy sense of humor. Once when I was 5, we got caught in a rainstorm at the park. I was crying because my ice cream fell in a puddle, so Dad put his jacket over my head and started singing this completely made-up, silly song about the sun coming out. He danced me around in the rain until I was laughing instead of crying. That was Dad, always trying to make me smile, even on my worst days. I miss that so much, but remembering it also makes me feel warm, like he's still here in some way.
He clearly loved you very much, and you carry those loving moments with you. They're a part of you.
Yeah. After I found him, I wasn't alone for long. Claudia was there. Claudia was the one who orchestrated all of this. She's part of a cult, the one from Silent Hill. She's the reason my dad. She wanted me consumed by negative emotions, and in that moment, I gave her exactly what she wanted. I hated her more than I've ever hated anything. I wanted to kill her right there. But before I could do anything, she had this creature with her, a monster that had killed my father. She locked me on the rooftop with it like throwing meat to a dog. I fought that thing. It was vicious, strong, and fast. In my fury, I managed to bring it down. I remember driving a knife into it again and again, screaming my head off until it finally stopped moving. I was covered in its blood, shaking, but it was dead. I should have felt some victory, I guess. But I didn't. I just felt empty. Dad was still gone.
You survived, but at such a cost.
After that, I was running on pure rage and adrenaline. I wasn't thinking straight. I stormed back down to our apartment. By then, that detective, Douglas, had found his way there. He saw my dad's body too. I could see in his face how horrible it was. Douglas blamed himself. Turns out Claudia had hired him to track me down. He had no idea what she planned to do, but he still felt responsible for leading her to us.
How did you feel toward him then?
At first, I didn't know how to feel. Part of me wanted to lash out at him, but I saw how shattered he looked. He tried to stop me from chasing Claudia and was worried I'd get myself killed. But there was no way I could just do nothing. I needed to go to Silent Hill and finish it. I needed to kill Claudia for Dad and, honestly, for myself too. Douglas ended up agreeing to help me. We did what we could for Dad. We laid him on his bed, covered him with a white sheet. Douglas found some lilies, Dad's favorite flower, and we placed them on his chest. I said goodbye, and then we left.
That must have taken incredible strength to leave him and go on.
I don't even know how I did it. I think I was numb, or running purely on that burning need for revenge. If I hadn't focused on that, I would have completely fallen apart. So, Douglas and I drove to Silent Hill that same night. It's not too far from Portland, a few hours' drive. The ride was mostly quiet. I stared out the window, crying until I had no tears left. Douglas occasionally said things like, "Your father, he must have been a good man," or he told me a little about how he lost his son. I think he was trying to console me, but I was just not ready to be consoled. When we arrived at Silent Hill, it was early morning. The town was shrouded in fog, just like in my dreams. We split up to look for Claudia. Maybe not the best plan, in hindsight. But we didn't exactly have a map for this sort of thing. Douglas went to check the nearby hospital, and I headed toward an old mental health clinic connected to the cult. I was hoping to find some clue about Claudia. Instead, I found evidence that the cult was actively hunting me. They called me the Holy One for some reason, and apparently not everyone in the cult was on board with Claudia's plan, since that sounded like an order to kill me.
That must have been chilling to see yourself literally marked for death.
It was. I realized then that none of this was over. These people, this cult, they weren't done, and I was still in extreme danger. It made me even more determined to find Claudia first. After the clinic, I made my way to Brookhaven Hospital. That's where Douglas said he'd go. The hospital, that place was a nightmare of its own, even before the other world fully took over. It had this heavy, oppressive atmosphere. I kept finding notes addressed to me by someone named Stanley Coleman. He was apparently a patient at the hospital, and he'd become obsessed with me. The notes were disturbingly loving, calling me his darling Heather, talking about how he dreamed of meeting me. They'd start sweet and then turn delusional. One note came with a blood-stained doll and said something like, "Even though you've never noticed me, I'll be there for you. In my dreams, I watch you." It was extremely unnerving. Like even in that hell, I had a stalker.
Silent Hill seems to not only manifest physical dangers, but psychological ones tailored to prey on your fears. In this case, the fear of being watched or pursued.
Exactly. I felt like the town was alive, playing mind games with me. At one point, a phone in an empty patient room rang, and when I answered it, a voice whispered freaky things to me. I was so on edge, I nearly threw the phone. I also spoke with Leonard, Claudia's father. He called through a telephone as well, babbling about purifying the world and the cult's paradise. He offered to help me stop Claudia. I thought he might have something I needed, so I agreed to meet him in the basement. Meeting Leonard, that was another horror. He wasn't a man anymore. By the time I found him, Leonard had transformed into this monstrous thing in a flooded underground corridor. The moment he realized I wasn't a fellow cultist, he lunged at me. I had no choice but to fight him too. I killed him.
That's a heavy burden, even if he had turned into a monster. Are you alright talking about that?
I tell myself he wasn't really human at that point. That whatever humanity Leonard had was long gone. He tortured and abused Claudia when she was a child, turning her into what she became. He was evil, even as a man. But yeah, it weighs on me. Each time I had to kill, a part of me wondered if I was losing a piece of my own humanity. To make it worse, around that time, I ran into a guy named Vincent Smith. He was a member of the same cult, but unlike Claudia, he wasn't trying to bring about their god's birth. In fact, he was opposed to it, though not out of kindness. He had his own agenda. Vincent was slippery. He enjoyed messing with my head. At one point, he dropped a comment that still chills me. He asked me with this strange little smirk, "Monsters? They look like monsters to you?" It was such a mindfuck. For a split second, I wondered if any of the creatures I killed had actually been innocent people, that I was hallucinating as monsters.
Did you truly believe that?
Not really. Douglas saw them too and nearly got killed by one, so I know they were real. But Vincent made me doubt myself. That was his way. He liked twisting perceptions. I think he was studying me, curious how I tick. It was unnerving. I felt like even in my fight for survival, I was being psychologically toyed with.
Manipulation like that can make you second-guess your own sanity. The fact you can still trust your memory despite his suggestions says a lot about your resilience.
Maybe. I did have a moment of panic though, thinking, oh God, what if I have been hurting people? But logically, I know that's not true. It's just one of those cruel tricks that sticks with you. Anyway, Vincent claimed to be on my side, insofar as he didn't want Claudia to succeed. He told me where Claudia likely went. So, I left the hospital to head toward the amusement park. On the way, I stumbled upon a small church confessional. It's strange. Among all the chaos, this one quiet booth just appeared. Through the screen, I heard a woman's trembling voice. She was confessing, begging God for forgiveness. She said she had committed a wicked act of revenge and deserved to die for it, but that she only hoped God would spare her soul and let her see her daughter in heaven. As I listened, she was talking about having killed her own daughter as revenge against someone. I still don't know if that was a real person or some spirit of the town, maybe even an echo of a mother like Dahlia, or someone consumed by guilt.
Even in the midst of your own pain, you offered forgiveness to a stranger?
I did. The woman on the other side gasped out a, thank you, Lord. And then silence. The crying stopped. I don't know if I actually eased someone's suffering or if the town was testing me, but I felt a tiny bit lighter after saying it. Maybe a part of me, the part that was Alessa, the hurt child who'd been wronged by her mother, needed to forgive someone or to know I could still show mercy. I wasn't going to be like them, full of hatred.
That's incredibly profound, Heather. Amidst all this darkness, you showed compassion and forgiveness. That speaks volumes about who you are deep down.
I'm not even sure who I was forgiving. Dahlia, my own mother figure, some projection of the town. but it felt right. After that, I continued on with a bit more resolve. Finally, I reached the amusement park. Just like in my nightmare, it was deserted, blanketed in fog and drifts of snow or maybe ash. The giant bunny mascots with their vacant eyes and blood-stained mouths were scattered around, just as I dreamed. It was surreal and so frightening. Almost immediately upon entering, I found Douglas again. He'd gotten there ahead of me, but had been attacked by a monster. One of those huge missionary beasts with blades. His leg was broken. He was lying in pain near the park entrance. I was honestly so relieved to find him alive. I thought I might be completely on my own. He told me Claudia was somewhere in the amusement park. I wanted him to stay put and hide. He couldn't walk anyway with that leg. I left him my gun for safety and ventured through that empty amusement park. It was like walking through one of my nightmares. The Ferris wheel looming in the fog, the carousel lights flickering faintly. At one point, I had to go through a haunted house ride, of all things. It's almost darkly funny, a haunted house inside a real nightmare. It had the typical cheesy jump scares. Then, suddenly, the floor collapsed and nearly sent me into a pit of spikes. That part wasn't in the brochure. I don't know if it was the other world bleeding in or just a cruel trick of the park, but I managed to escape it. Eventually, I got to the carousel, the same one I've seen in my dreams. It was turning slowly on its own, lights blinking. I stepped onto it, thinking maybe Claudia was there. Instead, I was confronted by something deeply personal. There were figures on the carousel horses. At first, I thought they were just charred corpses or dummies. But then, one by one, they climbed down. These figures, they looked like me. Copies of me, but burned, faceless. Their clothes scorched versions of mine. They surrounded me. It was like looking at a circle of broken mirrors reflecting parts of me I didn't want to face. And then they attacked.
Confronting literal versions of yourself. It sounds like you were face to face with your own shadow, the darkest parts of you given form.
I thought of that later too. Maybe each of those doppelgangers embodied my hatred, my fear, my guilt, everything ugly inside me. At the time, though, I wasn't analyzing it. I was just trying to survive. I had to fight myself over and over. Every time I destroyed one, another would come at me with a knife or pipe. I was in a frenzy, swinging a steel pipe I'd picked up, shooting when I had bullets. For a moment, I truly thought I'd die there, surrounded by twisted versions of me. It was utterly terrifying, like my worst self wanted to drag me down.
Very poetic indeed. It shows tremendous inner strength.
After I destroyed the last of those dark doubles, the carousel finally stopped. And then, I saw her.
Her?
A girl about my age appeared on the carousel. Long black hair and burn scars all over her body. She was in a school uniform, just standing there amid the charred horses. I knew instantly who it was. It was Alessa Gillespie.
Alessa, the name Claudia mentioned, the one from 17 years ago.
Yes, Alessa was a girl from Silent Hill. When she was a child, the cult, they did awful things to her, burned her alive in a ritual, kept her alive in perpetual pain to incubate their deity. My father was involved back then, unwittingly, and through a series of events, Alessa and I are the same, in a manner of speaking. So, seeing her was like seeing an echo of myself. She didn't speak. She just looked at me with such sadness. I felt a surge of empathy and understanding pass between us without words. It's like I remembered everything then, who she was, who I was. For a split second, I actually felt whole, and then she was gone. She merged with me, or faded away. I'm not sure which, but I was alone on the carousel again. Yet I didn't feel alone inside. I felt Alessa with me, in me.
It sounds like a moment of integration, two halves becoming one.
It does. Up until that point, I'd been discovering that I had memories that weren't originally mine. But I was more than just Heather. I was also Cheryl Mason, the baby my father had adopted. And Alessa Gillespie, the tormented soul from Silent Hell. After that meeting on the carousel, I think Alessa's remaining essence and mine fully united. I felt different, more grounded in who I am. And who I am Heather Mason, who was once Cheryl and once Alessa. All of those, but also just me.
That's a powerful realization, embracing all parts of your identity.
It was. It gave me strength for what came next. I knew the final confrontation was close. I left the carousel and entered the heart of the cult's sanctuary, an old chapel hidden beneath the amusement park. Inside, it was like stepping into another era. There were altars. One mural showed a woman, no, a young girl engulfed in flames. I realized it was depicting Alessa's immolation. Seeing that, I had a flashback. For an instant, I was Lessa on that hospital bed after being burned, feeling the agony and betrayal. I remembered screaming for my mother, Dahlia, begging, "Mom, no," as the fire spread around me. Why are you doing this to me?
That's a powerful realization, embracing all parts of your identity.
Yes, a memory surfacing.
You have nothing to apologize for. Your voice slipping into Alessa's shows just how intertwined her experiences are with yours. Hearing that plea, "Why are you doing this to me?" really highlights the source of so much of your pain. Your birth mother, Dahlia, hurt you in unimaginable ways. The woman who should have protected you instead sacrificed you. In psychological terms, she became a kind of terrible mother figure, a twisted inversion of what a mother should be. That kind of betrayal leaves deep wounds.
Yeah. How could she do that? What kind of mother burns her own child alive? I never knew her as anything but the monster who started all this. It definitely screwed up my trust in, well, a lot. If your own mother could betray you like that, it's hard to feel safe with anyone.
It says nothing about your worth or anyone else's reliability. It was entirely her failing. In mythology and psychology, there are indeed tales of parents who harm their children precisely because it's so unnatural and horrific. Dahlia unfortunately embodied that archetype of the devouring, destructive mother. But those are rare exceptions. Most mothers would never do what she did. You, as Alessa, were an innocent child. None of that was your fault in any way.
I know. Logically, I know. But it left me pretty messed up about the whole idea of motherhood. And then I was forced into that role, in a way. They put something in me, their so-called God. It was like being impregnated by evil.
Being forced to carry that God, it turned the concept of motherhood into a violation for you, something horrifying instead of loving.
Exactly. Honestly, I don't ever want kids after that. At least not for a long time, if ever. The idea of something growing inside me now, even normally, it freaks me out. I'm afraid, I don't know, that it would turn out wrong, or that I'd be a terrible mother because of who I came from.
Your fears are completely understandable. But remember, you are not Dahlia. If one day, far in the future, you choose to have a child, it would be under loving circumstances of your choosing, not something forced by dark rituals. And if you decide never to, that's okay as well. What matters is that it's your choice. No one will ever force that on you again.
Yeah, my choice. And my choice right now is definitely no thanks to motherhood. Maybe that'll never change, but it's comforting to know I'm in control of that now.
Absolutely, you have that control.
So, in that chapel, after dealing with those memories and thoughts, I pressed on deeper into the church. On the way, I stumbled upon a small confessional behind a pew. That's where I heard that woman's confession I mentioned. Offering her forgiveness felt important somehow. Maybe it was Alessa, in me, forgiving her own mother in proxy. Or maybe it was just me not wanting to let vengeance consume me completely. It felt like the right thing to do, even though it was bizarre. After that, I continued on, more determined. That's when I finally found Claudia, and Vincent too, actually, in the inner sanctum of the chapel. They were arguing intensely next to this giant painted mural of some haloed emblem. Vincent had a smug look, like he thought he had the upper hand. He said to Claudia, "Even if you do create your paradise, no one's gonna accept it, you know? No one will ever understand your God. You'll be alone in your so-called perfect world." I stepped forward then. I told Claudia it was over, that I wasn't going to let her use me anymore. She, of course, insisted it was my destiny to birth God, and that my father had only delayed the inevitable. It was then that the terrible pains hit me. The thing growing inside me, the God fetus, it started writhing. I collapsed to my knees, the worst pain I've ever felt, like my insides were on fire. Claudia was ecstatic. I thought I was going to lose, that this thing would tear its way out of me right there. But then I remembered. My father had given me something for exactly this situation. A keepsake pendant I wore around my neck. It had a red liquid inside, called aglafotis. My dad got it in Silent Hill 17 years ago.
You expelled the fetus?
I did. It was small, barely developed. A writhing, bloody lump the size of maybe a newborn's heart. It fell to the floor, squirming. Claudia and Vincent both just stared in disbelief. That was supposed to be their new God. I had essentially performed an exorcism on myself. Claudia completely snapped. She ran straight for the wriggling fetus on the floor. And she picked it up and swallowed it whole.
My word.
Yeah, she was that fanatical. She said, if I wouldn't birth God, then she'd do it herself. It was horrific, like something out of a nightmare within a nightmare, watching her greedily gulp down this bloody creature. Almost immediately, Claudia began convulsing. She looked at me and managed a twisted smile, then staggered backward and fell into a pit, a large opening in the floor of the chapel that led down into darkness. She took the fetus into that darkness with her. I was weak, but I had to know what happened. I limped down a side ladder into that pit. It was some kind of underchamber or cavern beneath the chapel. Claudia lay there on the ground, dead or dying, I'm not sure. Her abdomen was bulging and distorting, far beyond what it should. The fetus, it was growing inside her at an unnatural speed, using her body to birth itself now. I approached as close as I dared, and then the thing burst out of her. Claudia's body was ripped apart from within as this grotesque god emerged.
Heather.
It was the most awful thing I've ever witnessed. Claudia essentially died giving birth to the deity she'd wanted so badly. In her last moments, she looked strangely content, and then she was gone. And that god, it stood before me, fully born. It was female in form, sort of, but large and grotesque. Its skin was charred black, like a corpse from a fire, and it had a vaguely human face, except the eyes were empty pits, weeping something like blood. It was as if all of Alessa's pain and suffering had shaped this creature. And though it didn't speak words, I could feel its thoughts. It hated me. Maybe because I'd tried to stop its birth, or because I carried the emotions of Alessa, who never wanted it. Or maybe it simply was hate, a god of hate, born from so much pain. Either way, it attacked. It was surprisingly fast. I barely rolled away, as it spewed a burst of flame-like energy at me. I could feel my skin sear on one arm where it grazed me. I thought back with everything I had left. I'd retrieved my handgun from Douglas earlier. I unloaded round after round into that thing. It just kept coming. We circled each other in that blood-soaked chamber, two adversaries fueled by grief. It, the culmination of Claudia and Alessa's anguish, and me, the culmination of Harry's love and Alessa's will to resist. In the end, I don't even know exactly what did it. I reloaded and kept firing until I had no bullets. Then I grabbed a nearby iron bar and struck at the creature's legs, its head, anywhere that seemed vulnerable. I was screaming, in fury, in pain, in sorrow. I don't even know which emotion was driving me at that point. Maybe all of them. Finally, the god staggered. It let out this cry, not a roar of rage, but almost a wail of despair, like a dying child. That sound, even after everything, it filled me with such sadness. Then it collapsed. Its body started to burn away, crumbling into ash. In embers. In its face. For just a moment, I thought I saw Alessa's features. Peaceful. Free. Then it was gone. The thing Claudia had given everything for was gone. I had prevented the apocalypse she wanted, but I also felt like I had killed a piece of Alessa. Or maybe a child that never asked to be born.
You did what you had to do to protect yourself and likely many others. It sounds like that God was born of suffering and would only have caused more. Still, ending any life, even a monstrous one, can weigh on the soul.
Yeah, it's strange. I hated that thing. I wanted it dead. But when it actually lay dying, I pitied it. It was like seeing the physical form of all the misery in Silent Hill. Something that maybe didn't need to exist if people hadn't been so cruel to create it. When it was over, I just stood there, in shock. I eventually climbed back out of the pit to the chapel above. Vincent's body was there. He'd been stabbed by Claudia just before the end. I remember looking at him and feeling nothing. I didn't like him, but I also didn't think he deserved to be stabbed to death. Still, I was so drained I couldn't even mourn or be angry. I just noted to myself, Vincent's dead, Claudia's dead. I made my way out of the church, back outside. The fog was lifting, I recall that. Dawn had broken while I was underground. The air felt different, lighter somehow, as if whatever evil power had been hanging over the town vanished with the creature I killed. I found Douglas waiting for me. He looked up, saw me covered in blood, and for a second, I saw fear in his eyes. I must have looked like a ghost or a monster myself. To be honest, I felt barely human at that point. I couldn't resist playing a stupid joke on him. I approached him slowly, not saying anything. He called my name, Heather, and I didn't respond. I just stared at him blankly. I even had my knife in my hand. He looked genuinely frightened. After a few tense moments, I suddenly smirked and said, "Gotcha."
Gallows humor. After unimaginable stress, sometimes a joke, even a morbid one, can snap you out of the nightmare, bring you back to reality.
Exactly. It did, in a way. I apologized to him, and he forgave me. He was just relieved I was okay. We left Silent Hill immediately. I supported Douglas, since his leg was injured, and we slowly made our way back to his car. We didn't really talk much on the drive out of town. There wasn't much to say. We'd both been through so much. I think we exchanged a glance that said, "It's over." As we drove away, I remember looking in the rearview mirror at Silent Hill receding into the fog. I felt conflicted. Devastated about Dad, yes. Exhausted and traumatized, absolutely. But also, in a strange way, I felt victorious. We had stopped the evil. We had laid the past to rest. Silent Hill wasn't done hurting me. I faced it, and I ended the nightmare. For now, at least.
You've been through an ordeal that is beyond what most people could even imagine, and you survived. More than that, you saved yourself and possibly many others from a great evil. How do you feel, having recounted all of that?
Honestly, exhausted, but also lighter. I've never actually told the full story out loud to anyone. I was afraid to. I mean, who would believe it? But you're not looking at me like I'm crazy. You're just listening. It feels good.
Sometimes just having one person hear your story and believe you can ease the burden immensely.
It does. I actually feel proud of myself hearing it back like this. Is that weird? Like, I can't believe I did all that.
It's not weird at all. You should feel proud. You were extraordinarily brave and resilient.
I survived. I fought monsters and cultists, and I survived. Dad would be proud of me, I think.
What do you think your father would say to you now if he could see you blaming yourself and hurting like this?
Oh, honey, none of this was your fault. He'd tell me he chose to fight to protect me, and he'd do it again, and he'd tell me to not give up on living. He always wanted me to have a normal, happy life. He'd say, Heather, you have to go on. You have to live. Be happy. For me.
And from everything you've said, he absolutely wouldn't want you to shoulder any guilt for what happened. He chose to protect you. He wouldn't want his death to destroy your life.
I know that. I just miss him so much. Sometimes I feel so angry at myself that I couldn't save him, or that I wasn't there sooner.
Those feelings are normal in grief, especially traumatic grief. The if-only and what-if thoughts. But in truth, the only person to blame is the one who committed the act. Claudia, not you. You mentioned earlier that your father always wanted you to be happy. What are some things that made you happy before all this? Hobbies, dreams.
I mean, I was a pretty typical girl in some ways. I liked shopping for goofy tchotchkes. I loved eating junk food with Dad while watching cheesy sci-fi movies. I was really into reading horror novels. Ironically, I enjoyed scary fiction, never imagining I'd live something scarier. I used to draw doodle characters from comics I liked. I didn't have a ton of friends because we moved so often, and I was different. I've wondered if I might be, neurodivergent or something like ADHD, or maybe on the spectrum. I always daydreamed in class and had a hard time fitting in. Dad used to call me his little spaceman because I'd space out, lost in my own world. I tended to be blunt without meaning to, which sometimes put people off. But Dad didn't mind. He said it was better to be honest.
These traits, being daydreamy, blunt, having intense interests, could be neurodivergent traits, or simply part of your unique personality. In any case, they're you, and there's nothing wrong with them. Given your unusual upbringing and what was inside you from the beginning, it's no surprise you felt different.
I did often feel out of sync with other kids, like an outsider, and that was even before I knew any of this Silent Hill stuff. Now I feel even more alienated. How can I possibly relate to people my age after this? They worry about prom dates or college exams, and I've held a dying god in my hands.
It's true, your experiences set you apart, but that doesn't mean you can never connect with anyone. It might take time to find the right people who can accept what you've been through. Douglas, for instance, understands some of it and cares about you.
That's true. Douglas and I have stayed in touch. He calls to check on me. I've been kind of avoiding people, including him, because I don't know. I felt like I needed to deal with this alone. But maybe that wasn't the best idea.
Isolation often feels safer when we're traumatized, but connection is very important for healing. Even one or two people who truly understand or simply accept you can make a big difference. Douglas sounds like someone safe and supportive.
He is. A bit gruff, but he really cares. He's the only one alive who knows what actually happened. I think I will reach out to him more. Maybe have him over for a meal or something, just to not be so alone.
That's an excellent idea. Small steps like that can help you feel grounded in normal life again.
I've actually been thinking about what comes next for me. I don't want to be defined just by this trauma forever. Eventually, I want to do normal things again, finish my education, maybe get a job, build some kind of life.
That's very good. Having future goals means you're looking beyond the trauma, which is a sign of resilience.
I doubt I can just waltz back into my old high school as if nothing happened. Plus, I changed my identity for safety. But I could get my GED or take some classes under my new name. And Douglas, he actually offered me a sort of job. He said if I ever needed work, I could assist at his detective agency, filing papers, answering calls, that kind of thing. I might take him up on it. Low pressure, and I'd be around someone I trust.
I imagine not much could faze you now when it comes to mysteries. That sounds like a solid plan. Reintroducing a routine, staying connected with a trusted person, and building confidence in a safe environment. Step by step, you'll rebuild a life that feels worth living.
Step by step, yeah. I can do that. I owe it to myself and to Dad and Alessa to try. They both wanted me to have a chance at a real life.
They would be very proud of you, and I believe you're on the right track.
I hope so. I also decided to honor my dad in a particular way. I changed my name, officially, a couple of months after all that. My dad had named the infant me Cheryl, originally, before all the cult stuff happened, long ago. That name means a lot to me. It was the name they gave to the little girl they loved. So now I go by Cheryl Mason. I figured, new start, and it's like keeping a piece of Dad with me, always.
Cheryl Mason. That's a lovely way to honor him and your own history. How does it feel, being called Cheryl again?
At first it was strange. I'd been Heather my whole life that I remember. But now, a few months in, I like it. Cheryl was who I was as a baby, an innocent, loved child. Maybe by taking that name back, I'm telling myself I can be innocent again. Or at least that I'm not defined solely by the horrors I went through. It's like coming full circle and reclaiming something that was lost.
That's a beautiful interpretation. A name can carry a lot of meaning. Cheryl represents safety and love in your past. Heather represents strength and survival, and you encompass both.
Exactly. I'll answer to either name, honestly. I haven't totally let go of Heather, but legally and in spirit, I'm Cheryl now. It makes me feel closer to Dad, and also to who I was before all this.
We've covered an incredible amount today. Your story, your trauma, and even touched on some ways forward. I'm aware we're approaching the end of our session. How are you feeling now, having talked through all of this?
Drained, but strangely peaceful. More peaceful than I've felt since it happened. It's like carrying a backpack for months and finally getting to set it down for a while.
I'm very glad to hear that. You've done extremely well. You've been open and brave, and I know it wasn't easy to revisit these memories.
Thank you for believing me, for listening. I honestly expected any therapist to call me delusional.
I believe that what you've told me is your truth. And frankly, the details, the consistency of your story, and your emotional responses all convince me that, however surreal it sounds, it's very real to you. My role isn't to judge the reality of Silent Hill, it's to help you heal from what you experienced.
That means a lot to me.
Before we finish today, I want to emphasize a few things. First, you are not alone. You have Douglas, and you have me as long as you find therapy useful. Second, healing is a process. You've made an amazing start by telling your story. There will be ups and downs. Nightmares may continue for a while and new feelings may surface. But we'll work on tools to cope with them. You've shown so much strength and also compassion, even for others like that woman in the confessional. Those qualities will guide you through this. And third, I truly see a future for you, Heather. Cheryl. One where this trauma becomes just one part of your life, not the whole of it. You've descended into your own personal hell and returned, like the myth of Persephone who journeyed through Hades.
Persephone, the girl who went to hell and back?
Yes. In her myth, after being taken to the underworld, she eventually returned to the surface, bringing spring with her. She did have to spend part of each year in the dark, but each time she came back to the light. In many ways, you are like Persephone. You were dragged into a personal underworld. Part of you may still feel trapped there at times, in nightmares or memory. But you also have the rest of your life above ground, in the light. And each time you confront these shadows and then return to daily life, you'll bring a bit more light with you, one step at a time, Persephone. And like the phoenix that rises from ashes, you will emerge from this ordeal, reborn into a new life. You've done it before, in a sense. Out of Alessa's literal ashes, you were born as a baby and given a chance. Now out of this fiery trial, a new, stronger Cheryl can rise.
Persephone and a phoenix. I kind of love that. It's a lot more hopeful than I'm used to feeling.
Hope can be hard to hold onto after trauma, but it's so important. And I truly see that hope for you.
I think I see it too, a little. I'm alive. I have a chance to live. Not just survive, but live. Thank you, doctor, for everything today. I know I dumped a crazy, heaping pile of stuff on you, but you've helped make it feel a bit more manageable.
You did the hard work, sharing and processing it. You should be proud of yourself. And please, just call me Sigmund if you like.
Thank you, Sigmund.
Take care of yourself. Perhaps do something gentle for yourself today. You've earned it. I'll see you next week. Same time?
Yes, I'd like that. You know, I think I'm gonna be okay. Not overnight, not magically fine, but eventually. I can actually imagine okay existing for me now.
I very much believe you will be.